February 2nd, 1959, midnight. In the frozen wasteland of the Ural Mountains, 9 experienced hikers tore their way out of their tent from the inside, half naked. The thermometer read -30 degrees Celsius. Some weren't even wearing socks. What did they see? Why did they run? And why did none of them ever come back? When search teams found them 26 days later, what they discovered shocked even hardened Soviet investigators. The file was immediately classified. For 30 years, nobody knew the truth. This is the story of the Dyatlov Pass incident. And today, finally, I'm going to tell you what really happened on that terrifying night. The story begins with Igor Dyatlov, 23 years old, one of the brightest students at the Ural Polytechnic Institute. He studied radio engineering and was an expert mountaineer. This was his 5th major expedition. He was confident, perhaps too confident. The group consisted of 8 other hikers, all university students or recent graduates. Zanita Kolmogorova, 22, the only other woman besides Lyudmila Dubinina. She was known for her infectious laugh and determination. Lyudmila, 20, was studying engineering and construction. She kept a diary that would later provide crucial clues. Alexander Kolovatov, 24, was the quiet genius of the group. Nuclear physics student. Some say he knew things, the others didn't. Rustem Slobodin, 23, was Igor's closest friend. They'd climbed together many times before. Yuri Doroshenko and Yuri Krivonishenko, both 21, were the jokers of the group, best friends since childhood. They would die together, clinging to the same tree. Nikolai Thibault Brinals, 23, was the son of a French communist who'd fled to Russia. He spoke 4 languages and dreamed of becoming a diplomat. Then there was Semyon Zolotaryev. He was different from the others. 38 years old, a war veteran with 4 medals from World War II. He joined the group at the last minute. Nobody really knew why. Some say he was there for another purpose entirely. They left Sverdlovsk on January 25th, 1959. Their goal was Mount Otorten, which in the local Mansi language means don't go there. But young intellectuals didn't believe in superstitions. They believed in science, in progress, in the bright Soviet future. Yuri Yudin fell ill with back pain and turned back on January 28th. He hugged each of his friends goodbye. He would be the sole survivor for the next 54 years. Until his death in 2013, he would be haunted by one question: what if I had stayed? By January 31st, the group had reached the edge of the highland zone. They cached surplus food and equipment for the return journey. Grugor wrote in his diary, "It's heavy labor. We're slowly getting higher. The visibility is extremely poor. We can barely see the next step." That evening, they reached the base of Kalat Siakla Mountain. In Mansi, it means dead mountain. According to local legend, 9 Mansi hunters had died there centuries ago. 9, the same number as Igor's group. The weather was deteriorating rapidly. Any experienced hiker would have made camp in the forest below, where there was shelter from the wind. But Igor decided to camp on the exposed slope. Why? His friends questioned this decision. Zina wrote in her diary, "Igor insists we camp here. He says it's good practice for harder conditions." But there may have been another reason. Recently declassified documents suggest Igor was instructed to camp in specific coordinates. By whom? The documents don't say. They pitched their tent at 3,000 feet. The slope was 18 degrees, not steep enough for an avalanche. Investigators would later confirm. They ate their dinner cold frozen meat, crackers and chocolate. They made jokes about their luxurious accommodation. At 7 p.m., they started a small newspaper called the Evening Otorten. The headline read, "Science Conquers Nature." The irony would become apparent soon enough. The last photograph on their camera was taken at approximately 8 p.m. It shows a strange glowing orb in the darkness. Some say it's just a camera defect. Others aren't so sure. They went to sleep around 9 p.m. or tried to. Rustam's journal, found later, had a curious final entry. Unknown compelling force. These 3 words have haunted investigators for decades. What happened next has been pieced together from footprints, torn clothing, and the position of the bodies. Something woke them, or forced them awake. Between 9 p.m. and midnight, all 9 hikers cut their way out of the tent, not through the entrance, but through the side. Multiple slashes with a knife from the inside. They were desperate to get out, but why not use the entrance? The footprints tell a strange story. 9 sets of tracks, some barefoot, some in socks, one in a single boot, walking, not running, in a straight line down the slope, as if they were calm or controlled. The tracks continued for 500 meters to the edge of the forest. Think about this. You're experienced hikers. You know that without proper clothing in -30 degrees, you have perhaps 15 minutes before hypothermia sets in. Yet you walk calmly away from your tent, your clothes, your supplies, your only chance of survival. The first 2 bodies were found on February 26th by search teams. Yuri Doroshenko and Yuri Krivonishenko lay under a large cedar tree, 2 meters from a makeshift fire that had long since gone out. They were wearing only underwear. The tree told its own story. Branches were broken up to 5 meters high. The bark was scraped, as if someone had climbed it repeatedly. In Yuri Krivonishenko's mouth, they found a piece of bark he'd bitten off in his final moments. His fingers were burned, yet he hadn't pulled them from the fire. Why? Was he already dead, or was something preventing him from moving? 3 more bodies were found between the cedar and the tent. Igor Dyatlov, Zinaida Kolmogorova, and Rustam Slobodin had apparently tried to return to camp. They froze to death, in positions suggesting they were crawling. Rustam's skull was fractured. The medical examiner said the force required would be equivalent to a car crash, yet there was no external wound, no blood, as if the pressure had come from within. Zina was found 630 meters from the cedar. Her face was covered in blood, but again, no wounds. The blood had come from her lungs. She'd bitten through her knuckle in her final moments. What kind of pain makes someone bite through their own hand? Igor was found 180 meters further up. His body position was strange. One hand gripped a small birch branch. The other was protecting his head. His watch had stopped at 5:31. For 2 months, that was all. 5 bodies, 4 missing. The search was called off, then resumed. When the families insisted, the spring thaw revealed the truth. And the truth was worse than anyone imagined. On May 4th, under 4 meters of snow, in a ravine 75 meters from the cedar tree, they found the last 4. And this is where the story turns from mysterious to absolutely terrifying. Ludmila Dubinia's tongue was missing. Not cut out, missing, gone. Her eyes were also gone. The soft tissue of her face had been removed. Her ribs were broken on both sides. The medical examiner, Dr. Vozrozdeny, stated the force required was equivalent to being hit by a car at high speed. Yet again, no external wounds, no bruising on the skin. The ribs were broken from inside. She had blood in her stomach. She was alive when her tongue was removed. She swallowed her own blood. Think about that. She was conscious when it happened. Nikolai Thibault-Brignol's skull was shattered. The depressed fracture was so severe that pieces of bone had been pushed into his brain. The forensic expert said it was impossible to create such trauma without leaving external wounds, unless the force came from within. Alexander Kolovatov and Semyon Zolotaryov were found in an embrace. Kolovatov's neck was broken. Zolotaryov's eyes were missing. He was wearing Ludmila's coat. On his body, they found a notebook and pencil. He'd tried to write something, but the pages were too damaged to read. But here's where it gets stranger. Some of their clothing was radioactive, not slightly radioactive, 2 to 3 times the normal level. The type of radiation found was beta radiation, consistent with exposure to a nuclear source. Lev Ivanov, the lead investigator, brought radiological detectors to the scene. This was highly unusual in 1959. What made him think to check for radiation? Years later, he admitted, "I was ordered to test for radiation by someone very high up. They already knew what we would find." The forensic examination revealed more anomalies. The bodies showed signs of premature aging. Their hair had turned gray. Their skin had an unusual orange tan, despite being under snow for months. At the funeral, relatives were shocked. "They looked decades older," one mother said. "That wasn't my son in that coffin." The investigation was suddenly closed on May 28, 1959. The official conclusion: death by an unknown compelling force. The area was sealed off for 3 years. The files were stamped classified. But people in the area had seen things. Another group of hikers, 50 kilometers south, reported orange spheres in the sky that night. The sky was on fire, they said. Silent orange orbs, moving against the wind. The Mansi people, indigenous to the area, had their own explanation. They spoke of fire orbs that sometimes appeared over the mountain. They said the mountain was cursed. 9 Mansi hunters had died there long ago, and now 9 more had joined them. A meteorology student named Valentin Yakimenko was on duty that night at a weather station 35 kilometers away. He reported a bright flash at approximately 3 a.m. His report was confiscated. He was told to forget what he saw. In 1990, after the fall of the Soviet Union, Lev Ivanov finally broke his silence. "I was ordered to close the case," he said. "They told me to write avalanche, but I refused. There was no avalanche. I compromised with unknown compelling force. But I know what killed them. It was something connected with the fireballs, the radiation, the military tests in that area." Indeed, recently declassified documents show that the Soviet military was testing R-7 intercontinental ballistic missiles in the region. Could the hikers have witnessed a failed test, a crash? Were they eliminated as witnesses? But this doesn't explain everything. It doesn't explain the missing tongue, the aged appearance, the way they walked calmly to their deaths. In 2008, a conference in Yekaterinburg brought together investigators, scientists, and researchers. Dr. Vladimir Epifanov presented a theory about infrasound. Wind blowing through the mountain pass could create sound waves below human hearing that cause panic, fear, and even physical damage to internal organs. Tests confirmed the pass could generate such frequencies. But the Mansi guide, Peter Yakimov, who knew the area better than anyone, had a different explanation. Before he died in 2012, he said, "There are things in those mountains older than the Soviet Union, older than Russia, things that should be left alone. Those children disturbed something, and it took them." In 2019, the Russian government announced they were reopening the investigation. Using modern technology, they created computer simulations. Their conclusion? Avalanche. Despite the slope being too shallow, despite no signs of avalanche debris, despite the footprints showing calm walking, not panicked running, the families didn't accept it. Yuri Yudin, before his death, said, "I've spent my whole life thinking about that night. I know my friends. Something terrified them, something so horrible they chose to die in the cold, rather than face it. When I die, maybe I'll finally know the truth." In 2020, New evidence emerged. A previously classified report mentioned that Semyon Zolotaryov was carrying a camera. The film, when developed, showed strange lights in the sky. These photos disappeared from the archives. Who took them? Why? Alexander Kolovatov's diary, thought lost, was found in KGB archives. His final entry, dated February 1st, read, "We are not alone here." Knows more than he says. If something happens, tell my family I loved them. Who was watching them? What did Semyon know? The radiation remains unexplained. The force that caused the internal injuries remains unknown. The reason they fled their tent remains a mystery. Some say it was an avalanche. Others, a military cover-up. Some believe it was infrasound or paradoxical undressing caused by hypothermia. But none of these theories explain everything. The tent was still standing when found. If an avalanche hit them, why was the tent intact? If it was paradoxical undressing, why did they cut their way out? If it was military testing, why the missing organs? 9 young people died on that mountain. They died in terror, in pain, in ways that science still can't fully explain. The Dyatlov Pass incident remains Russia's most enduring mystery. Today, a memorial stands at the pass. It reads, "To those who went into the mountains and never returned." Every year, hikers visit. Some report strange feelings, unexplained fear, electronic equipment malfunctions. The mountain keeps its secrets. Perhaps some mysteries aren't meant to be solved. Perhaps some questions are better left unasked. But for the families of those 9 hikers, the questions never stop. What happened on Dead Mountain? What force, known or unknown, natural or otherwise, killed 9 young people in the prime of their lives? We may never know. But one thing is certain. On February 2nd, 1959, on a remote mountain pass in the Ural Mountains, something happened that defied explanation. Something that still haunts Russia to this day. And perhaps, late at night, when the wind blows through the pass at just the right angle, creating those infrasonic frequencies that cause inexplicable terror, perhaps then the mountain whispers its secret. But there's no one left alive to hear it. The 9 are silent. The mountain is silent. And the truth, if it ever existed, is buried under decades of snow, secrets, and silence. This is the Dyatlov Pass incident, an unknown compelling force, a mystery that refuses to die, just like the questions that haunt us still. What do you think happened that night? What force could cause 9 experienced hikers to choose freezing death over staying in their tent? The comments are open. Share your theories. Because after 65 years, we're no closer to the truth than we were that cold February morning when the first search team found that abandoned tent, cut from the inside, on the slope of Dead Mountain. If you found this story as chilling as I did, hit that subscribe button for more dark mysteries from history. And remember, some mountains are called, don't go there for a reason.